Welcome to part 4 of our series, I'm Working From Home, Now What? Today's topic is going to be the World Wide Web. Goals, we're going to try to understand how the World Wide Web works and how attackers use it. We're going to identify some issues with online shopping, and then we're going to learn how you can be tracked via the web. So the outline, as I said, we're going to talk about the World Wide Web, look a little bit at searches, touch again on authentication, shopping, tracking, and then we'll close out with a few tips. So, World Wide Web, this is actually our primary method to access most materials on the internet. When you ask somebody what is the internet, oftentimes they'll refer to the browser they're using. Well, it's Firefox, it's Chrome. So a lot of people associate the World Wide Web with the internet. Couple interesting facts. The World Wide Web was actually designed as a replacement for the card catalog. It has obviously grown into a lot more than that. Currently, there's about 1.7 billion websites on the internet, and about 20% of all traffic on the internet actually is web traffic. If you're interested, the most predominant traffic type on the internet actually is videos. So, what is the World Wide Web? Well, the World Wide Web is actually made up of a couple of pieces. The piece that we're all familiar with is the browser, the piece of software that runs on your mobile device, runs on your computer, names of Chrome, Safari, Firefox, and others. This piece of software is designed to interact with web servers. It's designed to pull data from the web servers, display it in a form that is pleasant, form with pictures and what we're used to seeing today on the web. So what this actually is actually a file transfer system. The browser goes out and retrieves files from web servers and displays them on your computer screen. So a key part of that is this thing we call the URL. It's the address bar. It's at the top. And this thing called the URL actually tells a couple things. It tells the browser where to go get the files. It tells it how to go get them, HTTP or HTTPS, which we've talked about a little bit, and we'll talk about again in a minute. The where is the web server that's going to. An example of CNN.com. And then the what is what file you want from the web server. So the browser uses the how and the where to talk to the web server and sends the web server the what, and the web server returns the data, the information, the files associated with that request. Now, as I said, we've mentioned HTTP and HTTPS a couple times. Key difference is that HTTP has no encryption. HTTPS encrypts the traffic, and we've talked about that, how that's important during authentication. We'll talk here in a few minutes about how that's important during things like online shopping. The other thing that the HTTPS actually does is it makes sure that the where, the www.cnn.com, is actually owned by the web server you're going to. So when you see the where and the padlock, you know that you're actually at www.cnn.com. So let's talk a little bit about content types. The web presents a lot of different content to you. The most common content is text, the words you see when you go to a web page. Now the text is in a pretty format. You see bold, and you see different font sizes and different fonts, but this text is the bulk of what we see and we read through. As part of that text, we have links. We're all familiar with the links. The links actually contain a URL, and as most of you may know, the name that you display in the text is not necessarily the URL. It's whatever name the website decides to put up there. And if you hover over that link, you'll see at the bottom of your browser the actual URL. And that's one of the things that we tell people to look at, especially if they're going to a website they may not be familiar with. That link may take them to another page on that website, or may actually take them off that website to another website. Another thing we see a lot on web pages today are images, pictures of various types. These images may actually come from that website itself, so pictures embedded in the website, or those pictures may actually come from another website. It may come from another website, not even directly affiliated or owned by the first website. Attackers actually use this when they build fake websites. They'll build the fake bank, which we've talked about this type of attack already, and they'll actually then link to images off of the real bank website to pull down images that match the real bank or whatever type of website they're trying to impersonate. The other type of content we find on the web are downloads, things that get downloaded to your browser. And so I want to focus a little bit on these downloads because they themselves present different types of threats. First of all, these downloads may be saved. You'll see a little pop-up often that says, what do you want to do with this download? Sometimes the downloads will be, you can open them directly, or you can save them, or you can do both. When you open them, they actually do get saved. So these downloads can consist of data files, which oftentimes are somewhat harmless. Things like PDF, those types of files. Now inside of a PDF there may be links to other websites, so while you might say a PDF is harmless, what you do with the PDF may cause some problems. And we'll talk a lot more about those kind of problems in our next series on malware. There's application files. You can download a Word and Excel, files that get opened by a particular type of application. Then there are executables, exe, MSI types of files. This we'll definitely talk about in the malware, part 5. But kind of just a little bit of a hint or a little bit of discussion about this is that you typically don't want to open these executables, but sometimes you do go to a site that's offering you a legitimate executable. You bought a piece of software and you're downloading it. One of the things that we'll talk about in the malware section is your computer will pop up a message and say, do you want to install this? And inside that message, legitimate software indicates it's been signed by the organization that's providing the software. And that's one way to tell that that's not a piece of malware. And then another way we transfer files or do downloads is by going to websites that present things like Dropbox or SharePoint or Google Drive. These are websites that allow us to share and to manage files. And from this website you can choose to download, you can choose to look at the files on the website, and you actually, with things like Google Doc or with SharePoint, you actually can all edit a file at once. You can bring it down, edit it, and re-upload it. So this type of the ability to collaborate comes through these various websites. So again, we'll talk about some of the dangers of some of these downloads in our next section on malware. A big piece of what we do on the internet, what most people do on the internet, is searches. Google is again synonymous with searches, although there are several other search engines out there, and they pretty much are the same. Some security issues or privacy issues that come up when we talk about searches is, first of all, we want to be a little careful about what we type in the search bar. And some of this is just to help us refine what we're actually looking for. Broad search terms obviously will get you a lot of hits, which may be somewhat meaningless. too narrow, and you may not get what you want. The searching is sort of an art form to be able to learn what you're searching for. And as many of you probably have experienced, searching can lead you to chasing down multiple rabbit holes. You'll find something that'll lead you to something else, and pretty soon you forget why you were searching in the first place. So being able to search is somewhat of an art form. Now, from a security standpoint, sometimes people will seed the searches so that their sites come up ahead of others. Those sites typically are more, from a security standpoint, it's a little bit more from a privacy standpoint, or from a standpoint of them trying to drive traffic to that particular site. Also notice that the first few sites are ads. So the first few sites you may see as a result of a search may not be the things that you're actually really searching for. They're paid to, these companies pay to have their name show up. Now that we're all at home, and we have eventually have children at home, grandchildren, etc., who are going to be doing a lot more searching, certain search terms, certain things may lead to undesirable results. And so all of these search engines have some type of a safe search. Google's is actually called Safe Search, where it tries to filter out some of the objectionable results that you may get when you enter a search term. But anytime you're searching for something, you just got to kind of be a little leery of what you get back as a result, because none of the results are vetted. You just get back what matches your search criteria. So another piece of the World Wide Web is authentication, username, passwords. Now we're not going to revisit in any detail usernames and passwords. That was talked about in part 2 of this series. But this is by far the most common place that we use passwords. Is on the World Wide Web. Now, browsers, we talked in part 2 a little bit about being able to remember passwords using a password keeper. Browsers will do this too, and some of the browsers will allow these to be shared across platforms. Personally, I don't use this I like to use the password keeper types of software, because that works across multiple sites, and something that I think is a little more easier to use. But again, if you're have just the one computer, having your browser remembered, again, you have a password to protect the passwords on your browser. But again, remember back to part 2 of the video series. So shopping is another big issue. That's what we tend to use the internet a lot for, especially in this COVID-19 era. It's estimated that almost 2 billion people worldwide use the internet for shopping. I think that number has gone up significantly in the last couple months. Some recent numbers: 62% have pre or post COVID-19 have bought groceries. So again, we're now using the World Wide Web, the shopping ability, for pretty much everything we do. We use it to order takeout. We use it to order curbside delivery. We're using shopping all the time now. So some issues around shopping. Obviously, the attackers know we're using shopping. HTTPS, again, we've mentioned that over and over again. Make sure you have the HTTPS. The other side of shopping is how do you pay for it? There are services like PayPal and others which are very valid and very useful services. And sometimes you may have a PayPal account and actually have a credit card tied to that and use that. In some cases, you may run against a website that is using something like PayPal for you to make that purchase. You don't have to have a PayPal account. It will bring up a guest to PayPal. You can enter your credit card information. It's just this PayPal is the credit card processor. A lot of small businesses, especially today when so many businesses have had to overnight convert to being able to do online shopping, many of the small restaurants, they use a third party in order to do this credit card processing. And so things like PayPal will do that. Again, very secure. They use an HTTPS. But a couple hints or a couple tips on credit cards. Some people like to use a low limit credit card for doing most of their online shopping. This limits your overall liability if that credit card were to get compromised. Again, most common way these credit cards get compromised is that the website that is processing your credit cards, storing your credit cards, gets compromised, and then it loses your credit card information. So a single credit card used for online shopping will allow you to monitor the receipts, monitor the bills a lot better, and keep track of what's going on. There was a question about storing your credit cards on the site itself. Again, the credit card is going to be there anyway after you've processed your transaction. So you're really relying on the reliability or the security of the site that is storing your credit card. Now, the credit card companies themselves limit your liability. So it's really a matter of convenience and how often you're shopping with that particular organization. Now, one of the things that you may see when you're doing this online shopping is it asks you for that little 3-digit code, the CCV code. That's there as another level of protection for your credit card purchase. That code is not. It should not be stored by the sites you're shopping with. Many times, if you do store your credit card and you go back to use it, it'll ask you for the CCV code again. And what that's there for is just a level of protection. That code's written on the back of your card. It's not encoded anywhere in the card, and so that's just a second order way to prove that card's in your possession. So even though you may think that's an inconvenience, that is something that is there for your protection by having the website re-ask for that code, and that code's not supposed to be stored by the websites themselves. So this next little thing I'll talk about is tracking. Now, this really is not necessarily a security problem. This is just an interesting thing that you may have noticed, and you may start to notice more now that you're online a lot more, you're doing a lot more online shopping, is this idea of tracking. And you may have run into this already. You may have gone to a site like Amazon or some other site and searched for something, and then you log into a news site or some other totally unrelated website, and all these ads pop up, and all of a sudden you start seeing ads for that thing you just searched for. And you may even go over to your phone and see ads for something you searched for on your computer. And this is all part of this ad tracking that takes place. And there's a couple pieces to this ad tracking. You may have heard of cookies, and these are not like chocolate chip cookies. So a cookie is a way for a website to remember your browser. By default, you don't log in when you use the web. You go to a website and you see what the website displays. The cookies are something a website can put on your computer, so when you come back, it remembers your computer was there once before. And maybe it loads some preferences. Maybe it remembers the last searches you did. it's trying to remember some things about you. Now, these cookies are not supposed to be used for any type of login or authentication. They're really just to try to remember some things about you. So, for the most part, cookies aren't a bad thing, and a lot of websites won't really work well without cookies. And you may start to see a lot of websites today even tell you the first time you go there that they're going to be using cookies. And do you accept the use of the cookies? So cookies are part of this ad tracking. Now, I mentioned a little bit ago the fact that an image does not have to live on the website. It can live on another website. So the way this ad tracking works is you go to, let's say, Amazon or some place like that, and you search for running shoes. And Brooks running shoes, and up comes pictures of Brooks running shoes. And what is actually happening, can actually happen, is the pictures of the Brooks running shoes actually are being downloaded from an ad site, a site that is designed to support this tracking. And so that ad site will put a cookie on your browser, on your computer, going, hey, you've been here. You look for Brooks running shoes. So now you go to CNN or you go to some other website, and that website will go out and contact and ask for an image from that ad site. That ad site will go to your computer, look for the cookie, and go, oh, you were searching for Brooks running shoes. So here are pictures of Brooks running shoes. And so those pictures get displayed on the website. And if for some reason that website knows a little bit about you, maybe you've linked it to your Facebook account, then now you go to your phone and you log in, or you go to some site, and now the Brooks running shoes are showing up on your phone. And so this cross-linking happens because your devices know that you have both devices. This ad site has cookies, ends up knowing who your browser is, and can track what you're doing. Is it a terrible thing? Well, it's probably a little invasion of privacy. You can turn on private browsing. Many of the browsers have what they call something like private browsing. That disables all of these things. Now, when you do that, some websites may not work very well. So that's a trade-off you have to make about being tracked versus the usability of some of the websites. But from a pure security standpoint, it's not really a big security problem. It's just more of a privacy problem. So in closing, a few tips to keep in mind. When in doubt, type the URL into the address bar. Be careful about downloading items from unknown websites, and we'll talk about this again in the next video series on malware. As we mentioned before, good passwords. And again, we talked about this 3 levels of passwords. The passwords for things you really, really want to protect. Passwords for things that, I want to protect, but I'm okay with doing a little password sharing. And then the passwords I just don't care. Sites that just want me to have a username and a password. And in closing, most of the internet seems to be free. You go to all these sites and they give you all this cool content and they let you do all these cool things, and it's, quote, free. Well, in reality, your data, your information, your habits, where you shop, what you do, that really is the currency of the web. And so all this tracking, all this trying to keep track of what you're doing, really is how these companies are making their money. So that's just something you need to be aware of as you're using the internet. Again, it's not really a big security problem. It's a little bit more of a privacy problem. So I want to thank you for listening. Stay tuned for part 5, which will be on malware. Again, this video series is was produced by Iowa State University with support from Des Moines Area Community College, the Iowa Cyber Hub. And again, this is distributed under the Creative Commons license. Thank you.